Hey everybody, welcome to For Food's Sake, the podcast bringing you down-to-earth dialogues about the food on your plate and its many impacts on people and the planet. My name is Matteo De Vos, and without further ado, let's talk about food. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode. It's been a little while since we released our last episode, but as they say, better late than never. Today we're talking about indoor urban farming, more specifically about vertical farming, and the role that vertical farming can play in building the cities of the future. Now, farming upwards instead of outwards is a growing response to the rather inconvenient and frankly unsettling reality of modern industrial agriculture. Our current agricultural system is one that's simply unable to sustainably meet the food demands of a growing world population. We're running out of space, out of soil, and out of forests, and with massive urbanization taking place all around the world, urban farming and vertical farming in particular are being pushed and have to be pushed forward to help build more independent, resilient cities of the future. Now, if you've been following any of my latest episodes, you'll have noticed that I keep coming back to this issue time and time again. We need viable alternatives to this over-reliance that we currently have, this complete dependence that we have on industrial agriculture. Because it's literally destroying the planet around us. It's stripping us of our forests and of all our non-renewable resources. And the tragic irony behind it is that it's often pursued to prop up unsustainable consumption habits. It encourages overconsumption, unequal consumption, and unsustainable consumption of the world's food resources. So as I mentioned, I think one of the ways that we can combat the dominance of this current industrial system is by supporting and investing in local small-scale solutions in urban farming and vertical farming. Now, one of the companies that's been on my radar for quite a while now and that I think offers an interesting solution is a company in Berlin called INFARM. Now, what INFARM do in a nutshell is they build and service restaurants and supermarkets with these autonomous, modular, stackable hydroponic farming units. And so for this episode, I'll be talking with INFARM's growth manager, Claire Gusko. Now, Claire is an old friend of mine. We go way back. And I have to say, it really is refreshing getting back in touch with an old friend and realizing that they're not only passionate about the same issues that you're passionate about, but that they're actively working with an organization that's trying to be part of the solution. So Claire and I will be discussing, first of all, what indoor farming and more specifically vertical farming is. And then we'll go into a little bit more depth about some of the advantages and some of the reasons why there's been so much investment recently in the industry. We'll also talk more in depth about INFARM and what their approach is and how they're trying to contribute to the solution. But we'll also importantly look at some of the concerns that people have with this movement that some consider just a fad, that others feel presents a direct threat to local small-scale farmers, or that others still might think is an unnatural way of producing food. But what I think you may ultimately find, at least in the case of companies like INFARM, is that with the right approach, the right vision and underlying philosophy, is that these criticisms and concerns, although valid and relevant, are not necessarily insurmountable. So on that note, without further preamble, let's get started. Claire, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
In this short, precious time we have together, Claire, I thought it'd be great to discuss the role that indoor farming can play in building the cities of tomorrow, the resilient, sustainable cities of the future, but also talk more specifically, of course, about what you do at INFARM to help be part of this movement. But let's start off by defining what it is exactly we're talking about here when we're talking about indoor farming. So maybe a simple question, maybe not, but what is indoor farming and what is it not?
Mm-hmm. I mean, indoor farming is a general term. It's quite broad. It pretty much is what it says on the label. It's any type of farming that you do indoors. I guess greenhouses kind of fall under that definition as well, but it can go from anything from commercial greenhouses to those small little hydroponic systems that you can buy at IKEA now to have in your own apartment. So it's kind of anything that goes away from the more kind of classical, traditional agriculture that you and I would know when we think of large-scale farming. It's kind of indoor farming is kind of developed now into something where, I was doing a general Google search today just to make sure that my definition of indoor farming wasn't so far off of general definition. It takes you directly to vertical farming. Google kind of assumes that when you put in indoor farming, you actually mean vertical farming. It's gotten to that point now. And vertical farming it's just realizing that there's a certain lack of space within cities. So if you want to do indoor farming within cities, you're going to have to build upwards rather than outwards. So I guess that's kind of how it developed. And just in general, indoor farming, it means it's a closed system. So you have kind of this thing that we call controlled environment agriculture. So every environmental factor that can be controlled to influence plant growth is, so that you're kind of creating this or recreating the natural ecosystem that the plant was kind of programmed to flourish within. And you're recreating that in your closed system so that the plants grow much better, sometimes much quicker, and also just kind of the way that nature intended, because you're giving them exactly what they need.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I like you said, when you Googled it and you got vertical farming straight away. When I think of indoor farming, I think that comes to mind for me is mainly skyscrapers, and I was doing my own fair share of Googling over the last week before this episode. But maybe talk a little bit about how indoor farming has become so popular, so in demand, and I guess especially, why is it that we're seeing so much investment and so much excitement around this idea of indoor farming? And more specifically here, I guess we're talking more about vertical farming, about farming upwards rather than outwards. You're seeing a lot of these projects, skyscrapers, not just, miniature farm units, but very large projects as well. Why are we seeing such movement in this area?
I think it's just generally we're existing in this era of just profound change. You have mass mobilization towards cities, so urban planners, they just have so many more challenges and so many more bottlenecks that they have to consider, because the amount of people that are going to be residing within cities, and these are all people that you have to feed, these are all people that you have to find space to live. It's a huge amount of bottlenecks that I don't think perhaps up until now we have had to maybe at this scale consider. So that's why you have these skyscrapers that, often they're not just vertical farms. They function as both, they're both living space and farms. So if anything, it's always considering how can we feed the mass of people that we already have, and then the mass of people that we're expecting to be born in the next couple of years or in the next decades. And I think also indoor farming is now going through this big, I don't know what to call it, but kind of this big boost of funding, of attention, just because the technology has now gotten to the point where it's no longer just a novelty. It's something where now people are truly considering it a scalable technology that potentially could be something that could feed the cities of the future. And so, it's amazing that there's so much more attention being drawn to the industry, just because the more attention there is, the more funding there is, and the more funding there is, the more research and development is happening. You saw similar things happening with electric cars up until a couple of years ago. It was also just a novelty. People were saying, but the energy consumption is so large, this will never be something that's normal. And then you had all these companies come along. Toyota did it with their hybrids, and now Tesla. It's a huge thing where people are, the only thing you want to drive is an electric car. It's the coolest thing to have if you can afford it. But I think kind of indoor farming it's going through a similar change, and it's very exciting. And it's all driven by humans. We're all moving into cities, and it's the density within these cities just calls for a rethinking of how we feed the population.
You mentioned bottlenecks. I think that's really interesting to focus on. I'm thinking specifically here, maybe the most obvious one being kind of transportation into cities, just just the food miles, I guess, of just the simple fact that, like you mentioned, we're in an era of urbanization. Everyone's moving towards cities, but most of our farming is still very much on the periphery. It's not in cities, and so we have this massive bottleneck. Could you talk a little bit more about transportation and how indoor vertical farming can kind of be a solution for that?
I mean, I don't consider myself in the position to speak for the indoor farming market as a whole, just because every company is approaching it in a different light. There are various different bottlenecks that each company is trying to address. I mean, just for INFARM specifically, we're trying to kind of curb the amount of import or imported goods or imported produce that you see coming into cities. I mean, we're used to having green asparagus 365 days out of the year, but I'm not sure if you're familiar, but sometimes if you walk through the supermarket aisles in Tesco, you'll see that your green asparagus is being flown in from Thailand. So, we've created food systems that satisfy our demands for everything and anything 365 days of the year, but it's just not sustainable. And it's also kind of taking away the focus from regional farmers who are still farming very much according to seasons and understanding that there are certain, environmental factors that they have no control over. But they will happily farm and produce the best produce for you that also doesn't travel very far. So I think, at least from INFARM's point of view, we're considering ourselves as a contributor to an urban food system. So we're not trying to replace the farmer in Brandenburg who still makes the best potatoes or who still grows the most delicious white asparagus every year. We're just trying to satisfy the needs of a very demanding urban population. So if you want your Thai basil every day of the year, INFARM is the solution to that, because you're no longer having to fly it in. You can grow it inside the city. And that's the same for a lot of different varieties as well that so far haven't been able to survive the supply chain just because the transportation is so long, or they don't survive the refrigeration, or the various kind of treatments that have to be given to plants so that they can survive the long trip to your plates. And by being able to farm right inside the cities, ideally right out of what we call a point of consumption. So it's a supermarket or a restaurant or a bar or potentially even hotels, schools, hospitals. It means that you can, I mean, theoretically, you could plant and produce any kind of plant. It doesn't matter from kind of which country across the globe it is from. So it's quite exciting, actually.
Yeah, I see that, especially the idea. I think you're touching basically upon the idea of kind of the year-round harvest, right? So that consumers, like you mentioned, are very eager, and it's very hard, let's say, to go back once we've had the taste of avocados in the middle of the winter in Europe. We're not exactly expecting to go back to square one and kind of accept the reality that is the seasonal farming. Could you touch a little bit, I mean, before we go more in depth about what INFARM's vision is and what exactly you guys do, just to give the listeners a bit more perspective on the issue of water and land use, which I hear that vertical farming and indoor farming is often linked to, and the fact that I mean, theoretically at least, and we can get into this later, but theoretically at least, there's a lot less water use, a lot less land use, and from that perspective, it can be much more efficient than, let's say, traditional orthodox farming.
Yeah, I mean, for the listeners who have kind of done a little bit of research, there are always a couple of numbers that are being thrown around, but these are generally relating to just hydroponic systems. So it's 90% less water, 60 to 70% less fertilizer, and it's purely because it's a closed system. So it makes sense that if a farmer in traditional agriculture were to water his crops, a large amount of that water is not going to be absorbed by the plants, and then it'll just kind of trickle down, and there's no way for him to get it back. He'll just have to keep rewatering his crops every now and again. Whereas in the closed system, where it's constantly being reused, and it's the same thing that goes for fertilizer and plant kind of nutritional solutions. So we just use significantly less. That's just the advantage of being able to control all of those factors that impact plant growth. I guess another advantage is the year-round harvest. Also, depending on the systems, I mean, I know that for INFARM, one of our biggest USPs is that we have a daily perpetual harvest. So our systems are designed in a way that you can harvest every single day. So our yield is actually extremely high. And it also means that it's very well suited to specific types of clients, because you're not having to harvest one day and then wait another full cycle of growth before you can harvest the next batch. But obviously this also differs between companies within the market. And also, just 0 food miles, because we plant and harvest right there where the customer takes the plant home. So I guess the only food miles that it has are the ones from the consumer taking it home from the supermarket or from wherever they've purchased the plant.
You mentioned also fertilizer. I mean, less or no. I mean, less artificial fertilizer. At least, does that also apply to pesticides? Then that it's. I mean, is it organic? I think that's a big concern for consumers generally as well.
Sure. I mean, I know that according to, at least in Germany, the organic certification, it actually requires you to use soil. So they're very strict and very stringent in that. So we're not in that sense organic, but I mean, our seeds are non-GMO, our seeds are organic, and we use no chemical pesticides. So you could technically you can actually take out a plant from our system, cut it, and put it directly into your salad or into your dish, however you wish. You don't actually need to wash it either, because the absence of soil also means that a lot of the diseases that plants have just never occur, because a lot of these diseases actually travel through the soil in traditional agriculture.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more. I mean, we've touched upon this, but about INFARM itself, their approach, I mean, your approach, and the work and the vision that you have. I mean, let's start with what it is exactly, in this space of indoor farming. What is it exactly that INFARM does, and what makes your approach special or different from other companies?
I guess at the basis of it, we consider ourselves unique in that. I mean, there are a couple of different indoor farming companies that do various different things and have various different approaches. Some are on a much larger scale, and some have decided to take the more modular approach, like we have. There's a couple of things that I think make us unique, but I think the biggest one is that we're one of the only ones, as far as we know, that are trying to create this distributed network of farms. So we realize that space is lacking within a city, but we also realize that the biggest value for the city is if you farm directly in the heart of the city, not in the perimeter of it. So the most kind of logical solution for our founders was to say, all right, so the only way that we can get or reach a larger scale is to have multiple smaller farms distributed across the city that are essentially connected through our central farming platform, so together actually act as one large farm. So this is this is INFARM's most unique characteristic, and it's the one that we're the most proud of, just because it utilizes a lot of modern technology as well that we feel should be used, because it seems silly not to. I mean, we have everything is kind of controlled and monitored remotely. Our central farming platform, it constantly collects plant data and growth data to make sure that we're always optimizing the way that our plants grow within our systems. And also just the modular approach literally means that if a supermarket or hotel says we have X amount of space, we can kind of stack our systems to fit that exact space so that we can really maximize given space. We're not forcing our way into the city. We're kind of adapting our systems in a way to fit into a given space.
So let's break that down a little bit. Just, on a very kind of basic level. So say I'm a consumer, say I'm a supermarket or a restaurant that's interested. What am I buying? Am I buying like an aquarium type shape where I can, plant certain plants, and then if I want more, I just pop another one on top? I mean, let's just break it down nice and simple. Mm-hmm. Like, how does it look?
Sure. For example, if you were a supermarket, it actually doesn't look so dissimilar from those large glass refrigerators that you have, the big ones, or the freezers where you can see everything inside it, and they're rather large. The lights are quite big, are quite bright. So it doesn't look too dissimilar to that, except we have plants growing inside them, and our lights happen to be a little bit of a pinkish hue. But it's a similar thing. So they'll tell us, look, we have a little bit of space. We need X amount of plants. We will then tell the client, okay, so for X amount of plants, you would need these many systems. They would then make sure that the space is available within their stores. And our business model is unique in that we don't sell our farms. So we run it's more kind of, we're making the farming capacity available to the customer. And our growers still come and they service the farms for you. And we our plant experts monitor the farms remotely from our central system. So at the end of the day, you as a customer, you'll have flavorful, fresh, beautiful plants that you can then sell on to your end consumer.
That's pretty cool. So people are just kind of, your plant experts, as you put it, they're at the headquarters, so to speak, and they can kind of monitor remotely how your plants are doing. Is this supply as well to kind of, if I were to, as a consumer, just an individual, could I order, a bunch of INFARM technology and put it in my room and watch it grow and do its magic without really doing anything myself?
Currently our focus is on B2B, just because the kind of the value for both sides in a B2B partnership, especially with food retailers, for us right now, it makes the most amount of sense. But we're not completely excluding the possibility that one day perhaps consumers could have systems in there. It's the beauty of it that if you were a food retailer, even if you were a restaurant and you owned and you had a little bit of space and you wanted your own system, because our plant experts, they monitor it remotely, so you don't have to worry about looking at the dosage of the plant growth solutions, or wondering whether enough water is being pumped through. It's all done remotely, and if something needs to be done on site, we'll come and do it for you. So at the end of the day, you can really just look and enjoy and see how beautifully the plants grow within your system, and then harvest. And then once these are harvested, you can use them in your dishes or use them for consumption straight away.
That's pretty great. You can just sit back and relax and watch the plants do their thing, and then pluck them when they're ready. I like that.
Exactly. That kind of ties into the scalability aspect of it. The plant experts, they all sit centrally, and they're feeding into our central farming platform with all of their know-how and all of their expertise. And then on top of that, all of the various data that's being kind of brought in from our various systems that are offsite at client locations. So altogether, we're constantly creating this kind of hub of knowledge around indoor farming and plant growth, and it's quite exciting.
And if you were the type of consumer, I could imagine myself, if I had a restaurant, I wouldn't necessarily want to sit back and relax. I definitely want to know kind of what's going on and see a bit of, just, I guess, get involved a little bit. Is there a way that kind of, from the consumer's perspective, they can just kind of keep track of what's going on and how their plants are doing, either from an app or kind of, I don't know, is there some kind of knowledge sharing platform? How can they get involved?
Currently there isn't. So there isn't kind of an app that'll tell you your plant is at 20 days maturity. But the systems themselves, they're made out of glass, so you can see the plants growing in front of you. And the growers will come regularly to plant and harvest. So there's a kind of knowledge sharing there that can happen between the client and the grower if questions were to come up. But these are all things that we're hoping to integrate, because we realize that this whole thing came about because the three founders who were originally from Tel Aviv, they were self-taught. They taught themselves how to build a hydroponic system, and they also experienced this I think it's a beautiful joy of watching your own food grow and then being able to enjoy the kind of the fruits of your labor at the end of the day. And this is very much something that also it really pushes, it really guides our team as well. And this is definitely something that hopefully in the near future, once we've, kind of established ourselves a little bit more, this is definitely something that we would be hoping to share with our end consumers and also with our clients, because it's just such a beautiful experience. It'd be a shame to not be able to share that with them.
Yeah, I agree. It's such a personal experience, and just the fact that, and I think that's what I really like about this approach is the fact that it's like it's transparent, it's out in the open, it's not somewhere in an abandoned warehouse somewhere, but this could literally be in a restaurant or I don't know, at a consumer where everyone can see it, everyone that kind of walks by or that goes to the restaurant, I guess in theory could see could see it right there and kind of be part of that experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing. The kind of current food system as we have it right now, it's very much built around mass and volume and low price, and I think we've become so far disconnected from it because it just isn't in front of our eyes. So that's sometimes why you'll have products that reach your plate and you're not even really 100% sure if it's exactly what's on the label. I mean, that's why you have those. This is a terrible example, but that's why you have those situations like with the Tesco horse meat debacle where people think it was ground beef, but it was actually horse meat because you have absolutely zero insight into what is happening in the production in the background. So the vision of the founders is it's not only creating an urban food system, but it's creating one that's resilient, that's transparent, and above all is affordable. So these are kind of the three main aspects that they're trying to establish and trying to push. Because in transparency, it's something that also the consumers of today, they're just pushing for. You just want to know where your produce is from. That's why organic food has also, especially in Germany, has had such a rise in demand, because people have said, I would much rather have my food coming from a regional organic farmer and pay a little bit extra because I know that these plants come from a regional farm and I know where they're coming from. So it's a big shift in consumer perspective as well, I think.
What vegetables can you, I mean, maybe just with INFARM, what kind of vegetables can you already grow with the system?
I mean, we're currently focusing ourselves on salads and leafy greens. So it ranges from everywhere from just, your regular romaine lettuce to your Moroccan mint. I mean, we have some Peruvian mint as well. We have this very, very interesting plant. It's called an ice plant. It actually only grows in the Saharan desert usually. It has these kind of little water bubbles, almost. That's what it looks like on its leaves, because that's how it stores water for its survival, I guess, in a very, very harsh climate. But these are kind of all the plants that we're focusing on right now. So leafy greens and herbs. But it's, there's a lot of different plants that we're testing to see how they grow in the system, because technically with hydroponics, you can grow almost anything. It's just a matter of, at least for a company, it's a matter of economic viability at the end of the day. If you're willing to spend the amount of time and the amount of energy for specific crops, it's another question.
You mentioned economic viability. I think that's on a lot of people's radars when it comes to a lot of these more niche, and some people would call these, these types of projects more hypes, and we'll get into some of the concerns that people might have a little bit later. But how scalable is it, and where are we at in terms of the technology and making these types of solutions scalable?
I mean, you have indoor farming companies that are already farming tomatoes and strawberries, actually inside supermarkets. I've seen a couple of them. The reason that we're focusing on herbs and leafy greens right now is because the way that these plants absorb energy is just a lot more efficient. They absorb it through the leaves, and with leafy greens and herbs, they just happen to have a lot of leaves. So the efficiency there with the energy consumption is just a lot higher. But we're also kind of experimenting with a lot of different crops, because the demand is there from our clients as well, especially. But I mean, I know for the founders, for example, I mean, they grew chilies, eggplants, aubergines, everything in their hydroponic system. So it's all possible. It's just a matter of, at least for us now, it's a matter of figuring out the best way to do it within the systems that we have.
And so in terms of challenges, I mean, with the scalability, maybe INFARM has kind of been able to overcome some of these obstacles, but something I've seen repeatedly pop up is the high cost barrier, I guess, of indoor urban farming programs or initiatives, and just the fact that maybe the fact that there's definitely some initial investments, whether it's the artificial lighting or the pumps or the automation equipment or what have you, the growing equipment, the fans, the computers, all this technology. I mean, for your average person, is the barrier, I guess, the entry barrier in terms of cost still quite high?
I mean, there's a lot of technology behind it. to make these things work the way that they do. I can't comment on the cost kind of structure of other indoor farming companies, but the way that INFARM does it is that we take that kind of first initial cost on us, because we're just charging the clients for farming capacity. So, it's not like our clients can have the systems inside their stores fairly quickly as soon as kind of we can get them built and get them installed. And the kind of high investment cost, it lies on us, because we realize that we're passionate and we believe that this isn't a fad. So we're trying to remove, I would say, financial obstacles, so that we can make sure that our farms are placed in as many locations as possible, so that people can see that this is just a viable way of producing food. But I mean, even in terms of large kind of these plant factories that you have, where you would assume, yes, you'd have to invest in a warehouse, then you'd have to invest in the technology. I mean, it's the same for any other technology. If somebody were to say, I'm going to build a car production factory the next day, the initial expense is also, it's always going to be large, because there's a lot of labor, a lot of machinery that needs to be bought to do so. I think just the skepticism with this new technology is a little bit higher. So this is always a question that we have to face, not only with our clients, but also, with investors and other stakeholders.
Yeah, you mentioned price as well, and I guess INFARM is taking at least that initial price on itself, and I think that's a concern a lot of people have too. Is that this initiative, even if it's well intentioned, because of the high prices, it might still be rather exclusive, rather elitist, however you want to phrase it. Is that another initiative you think? I mean, another problem, the pricing. That's just a matter of time and scaling it, and a matter of technology getting better and prices going lower.
As far as the way that we do business, we try and keep one of our objectives is to keep our prices, especially the price of our produce, at kind of the market standard. So it's not going to be much more expensive than the other basil plants that you might see in your supermarket aisles, because we don't want it to be premium. This is meant to be something that can feed everybody within a city, not just those that can afford to do so. So in that sense, I don't think that produce or plants that were grown inside indoor farms are necessarily always sold at a premium. I mean, there's a lot of them as well now in the U.S. and actually in Japan even more so, where they're sold at almost the same price as, let's say, traditionally farmed fresh produce.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that might be then. Maybe more often than not, that's one of those perceptions that people have, or one of those latent critiques that kind of hangs from before. I mean, as technology changes, these prices do kind of generally drop. Another maybe concern, and this is one that I think, at least in theory, makes a lot of sense, is I think a lot of people see a certain irony of maybe using renewable energies such as solar energy to power these systems that eventually use artificial light. And I think what some people might end up asking themselves is, why are we growing plants through artificial light using solar panels when we could just in the most simple way just grow plants by using direct sunlight? I mean, it seems like a silly example, but it kind of rings true, and you kind of do see it. I'm sure you've heard this example many times before, but it does keep popping its head. And what do you say to that?
It is a kind of an ironic way of looking at it. I mean, but you're looking at one thing. I mean, you're saying renewable solar energy to power LED lights that provide artificial light to these plants. But the artificial light inside the system, it's just one part that's being powered. The renewable energy, it doesn't just power that, it powers the climate regulators, it powers the pumps, it powers all the various different environmental factors that we're trying to control within these systems to give the plants the optimal kind of environment to grow within. And even if you were to put those same plants in the sunlight that you are essentially using, you won't be able to you won't be able to control the environment. You won't be able to control the climate. It might not be the right climate for that crop. So I mean, I understand the irony, and I do see the kind of I guess concern in it, but there's just so many kind of different various factors that you're controlling. Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems a little bit narrow viewed, of just too much of a narrow view in terms of what these systems can actually do. It's quite profound that without soil, with absolutely nothing but water and light and some seeds, these systems can consistently produce, honestly, I mean, some of the best looking plants that I've seen, and that kind of have this intense flavor that I feel like you've also forgotten, because we've just been so used to food that has traveled for such a long time that it's just completely lost the original flavor. And if it means that for now it has a little bit of an ironic spin on it, I guess that's something that we'll have to work on. Nobody's claiming that the technology is perfect already. It's a work in progress. But we're making progress in leaps and bounds, getting to a place where I think, the age-old questions of energy consumption, and, the real question of, is this truly that much more sustainable than traditional agriculture? These are things that hopefully in the next couple of years, with the advancements that technology is making, they'll just be questions that will no longer be as relevant, I guess, just because we've been able to address them.
Yeah. You mentioned as well, this idea that some of the freshest looking plants, the most healthy looking plants that you tend to see nowadays. And I think another, again, maybe latent, maybe unfair criticism, but definitely one that people seem to associate with indoor farming or with these hydroponic systems, is that it's not quote unquote natural, right? So that we're kind of recreating we're taking all the different factors that you need to essentially help a plant grow. But people, I don't know, they're either skeptical or they're critical, maybe rightly so. Do you get that kind of critique a lot as well, that maybe people are uncomfortable with the idea of artificially, in inverted commas again, growing a plant?
Of course. No, I mean, we get it a lot. And I mean, when you introduce these kinds of concepts, especially when I started working at INFARM, to family and friends, this is often one that you get. You don't trust something that's been growing without soil is a big one that people don't understand. They don't believe that plants can grow without soil. The artificial light is a huge one, because they believe that the sunlight is so much different to what we're giving our plants, that they don't believe that the plants can grow properly. I mean, I understand the skepticism. I mean, I had it too before I started, but at the end of the day, it's a question of, what do you understand under natural? I mean, the way that we farm today, that's also not natural. The most natural way for us to eat would be to go and forage in the forest. Traditional agriculture itself it's an invention of man. It's something that we have come up with in order to feed a growing population. So this is just another step in that. We're now figuring out how to do it within a city with some more modern technology. And at the end of the day, it's a good understanding of biology and chemistry and how plants work. And I think that's actually the most natural way that you can grow plants, whether it be out on the field and you're kind of using the resources that are naturally given to you, or whether you choose to recreate them in a more controlled environment. At the end of the day, a plant is just going to grow. And if you give it the right things, it's going to do it, whether it gets it from the sunlight or whether it gets it from an LED lamp. It really doesn't care.
Yeah. The plant doesn't really have a specific preference. No, I think you're totally right about this idea that people tend to compare these new technologies to this idealized image of what farming is, and I think people tend to forget that modern industrial farming is so far removed from that idealized image. And then even then, as you mentioned, agriculture itself, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a human invention, and it's a way of humans domesticating plants. I mean, if it's all a matter of how you define what natural is, and how far you're willing to go with that definition.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. This is also why we never position ourselves as a replacement for the local farmer, because that, in our eyes, is, despite the fact that on a greater scale or in the kind of different perspective, agriculture itself is not truly natural. But the way that the regional farmer farms, that to us is it's as natural as agriculture can get. Like they're using the climate that they're given, especially here in Germany. It's rather difficult sometimes, and they still make it work. And it's very seasonal. And, in Germany, exactly when white asparagus season is. It's a huge thing. Everybody has it in their supermarkets. Lots of people have it on their plates. When strawberry season is, it's nice that you can then also kind of reshift the focus onto the regional farmer a little bit, because I feel like they've also just been perhaps sometimes forgotten, either because a lot of people thought that they were too expensive for them to afford, which often isn't true, but you kind of have that little kind of like, what do you call it? I guess that thought when you think of organic regional farmer, you think that there's always a high price tag associated with it. But yeah, it's just finding a nice kind of balance between both. And that's something that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that kind of brings me on to my next point. And for me, at least personally, this is probably the most important. It's kind of, the human aspect of it, right? So you kind of anticipated my last critique here, which is that I think some people, they see these two forms of farming in direct competition with one another, right? That indoor farming and companies like INFARM are directly threatening, real farmers who are losing real jobs, and they're asking questions like, shouldn't we be focusing on supporting these small scale farmers that are running organic, small scale, sometimes permaculture systems. And are we sidelining them? Like, where should I spend my euro if I had one? Should it be at an organization like INFARM, or should it be with a local farmer? But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in that, it doesn't have to be this dichotomous, binary either or relationship. It's very much more. And in one way, organizations like INFARM help put more of a spotlight on local farming and can kind of indirectly, at least, support these real farmers, quote unquote.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as I said before, it's just urban populations. We're very demanding. There's a lot of things that we want. We want them all the time. We want them at a good price, and we want them to be the best quality that you can have. And this is just something that the regional farmers cannot always satisfy. So we're kind of filling that gap that up until now has been filled by imported goods. So that's really what we're trying to cut. We're trying to say, stop importing it from Thailand. Grow it regionally, where you can see where it's coming from, where it's not being treated to such an extent that you can't even taste the produce anymore when it comes to your plate. So we really think that it can, both systems, the urban food system that are now kind of being created with these indoor farming companies like INFARM, and then also kind of the regional food system. We think, they complement each other. They can work together. It's as you said, it's not one or the other. And just in kind of like in terms of permaculture, it's also something that we're inspired by. We're not trying to force nature to do something. If anything, we're just facilitating modern technology to really just bring it to, help the plants flourish. We're not trying to force them to be more, I don't know, like we're not making red salad leaves because we think that will be cool. We're very much also bound by the natural forces of biology. And we relish that as well because it's beautiful. So, I mean, as I was doing a little bit of research on permaculture, and the three core tenets of permaculture, which I think are beautiful, there are actually three also big values that INFARM follows. I mean, it's care for the earth, care for the people, and return of surplus. Yeah. So, I mean, the whole reason why indoor farming even came to existence is because we said that the way that we farm today is harmful to the environment. The acidity in the soil is so high because of the use of fertilizers, all these different factors. We want to care for the people because, we're trying to care for the existence of human beings. That at the end of the day is our main goal. And, the systems, they're meant to be built, they're built so that they're as efficient as they can be because we're trying to reduce waste. We're trying to cut down on just this excessive use of resources that we've gotten into this habit of. So if anything, I think a lot of, if people were to really look into it and look into the values that a lot of indoor farming companies, especially I believe that INFARM is trying to push, you'll find that there's a lot of overlap. And they're actually trying to very much do or kind of achieve the same aim at the end of the day.
I think that's a great note to end on. I never quite made that connection between permaculture and these types of organizations, but it's definitely healthy and helpful.
I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but for INFARM at least.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm probably like, there's probably some listeners out there that are screaming in their headphones right now, but no, but I definitely consider it healthy to remain skeptical on the one side, but on the other hand, definitely to try and kind of see these initiatives as working towards the same goal rather than always, against one another. It's not so black and white.
Of course. I mean, and the skepticism, all these questions that we're getting, all the concerns that you hear, not just from clients, from people like yourself and from consumers. These are all things that help us progress as an industry and as a market, because you realize that these are real concerns that you should be listening to. And if you say, the energy consumption is really something that is bothering me for this and this reason, it's not something that we're just going to ignore because it's easy to do so. It's something that then a lot of research and development and a lot of funding will go into to say, okay, well, if this energy consumption is such a big thing that we need to work on, then we will invest all that time and money into making sure that these systems are even more efficient than they are today. And that it's just a continuous cycle that I think a lot of indoor farming companies are constantly going to be coming up with even more and more efficient, better functioning technologies, so that at the end of the day, hopefully, it'll get to a point where it's no longer kind of perceived as new technology. It's just technology that's a part of our life. It's already happened in Japan. It's very normal there for you to see lettuces that were grown in indoor farms sitting right next to the kind of traditionally farmed lettuces, and they do it on a much greater scale there. But if it can happen there because they've just, the consumers have taken the time to understand and to appreciate what is being done, then I think it can be done here as well.
Definitely. Claire, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners out there who are either interested in indoor farming or potentially just want to hear more about INFARM? Where can they go? How can they reach out, or how can they follow INFARM?
Well, for INFARM particularly, I guess our website would be the best point to go to at first. Also in the next couple of days, there's a couple of very exciting announcements that we're going to be making, so that'll be quite nice. So I think there'll be a couple of things, and especially a little bit more additional information about INFARM and our very exciting founders who I think people should look into. The way that INFARM was established was actually it's quite a beautiful organic story in comparison to some other startup stories that you hear. So I think that's an exciting part of INFARM that if people want to learn a little bit more about the company, they should look into.
Cool. Well, I will definitely be looking into that, and I'll be looking forward to whatever exciting news it is that you're going to be releasing in a few days' time. Thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you very much for having me.
As Claire mentioned, if you want to find out more about INFARM, you can head to their website at www.inform.de. You can also follow them on Twitter. Their handle is INFARMBerlin. And of course on Facebook, where their handle is inform.de. As always, you can find these links also in the description below in the show notes. And I've also added a few other articles on vertical farming and indoor farming that I found interesting. Okay, guys, that's all we have for this week. We'll be back next week again. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to support the podcast, as always, you can like us, subscribe, and review on iTunes. That's the best way, the easiest way you can support the podcast. You can also follow what we're up to on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Our handle for all of those platforms is @ForFoodSakeMe. You can also find a list of all the For Food's Sake podcasts on the website. That's at www.forfoodsake.me. And you can also stream them there directly from the website. That is all for now. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.